Notice is hereby given that the mayor and council, city council of the city of Nogales will meet in regular session Wednesday, March 7th. I'll call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, please remain standing for invocation. Invocation will be given by Pastor Dave Cañada from the First Baptist Church.
Let's pray, shall we? Father in heaven, thank you for this great opportunity to pause in light of our country, in light of this city, in light of you. And we thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve our fellow man, giving us the opportunity to live here. And Lord, as we recognize the limitations of our country and our society and ourselves, we call upon you for your assistance as these servants of us and you in this city, as they gather to meet and make incredibly important decisions. May they seek your wisdom, may you grant your wisdom to them. In a world that struggles with darkness, personal darkness as well as societal darkness, may you enlighten them, and may they be willing to go wherever the truth leads them for your sake. And Father, in a world that needs so much your grace, may you help us all to be gracious, humble servants, willing to do whatever it takes to bring about your best for this community and beyond. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Pastor Dave, I've got a little copy here, one of our pens, and a thank you cards.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 4, call to the public. Is there anybody here? Call to the public. Is there? Yeah. No.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Norma Mahalish, and I'm here on behalf of some of Meadow Hills homeowners. And our concern is, and we have a question, and I know you won't answer my question, is that we see that there was some property or leveled off, and that was on Country Club Drive behind Postrero Drive. And our concern is, we want to know what is being built there. As I understood, not unless it's already changed, it had been zoned as a flood zone area. And you know, we're concerned. We want to know what's being built there. I know a lot of homeowners, if there are any apartments going up there, I know there's a lot of us that, you know, are against that. We're for housing, yes we are, but as it is now, the value of our homes have gone, you know, down because of the golf course, and you know, we're just concerned. So I'd really, you know, appreciate if you would take this into finding out for us in the future, maybe place it on the agenda, what is being built there. Okay, thank you very much.
I want to thank you very much, Norma. And yes, we can't reply to that, but if there is something there that that should be of an interest to the residents, we'll make sure that you're advised of this. And I don't think we've gotten plans of anything except for grading. So.
Yeah, and I understand that maybe we're jumping the gun, but you know, I think you know, we'd like to know what is being built there, and that's a concern to all of the homeowners there. So I'd really appreciate it if maybe in the future look into it, and if there is something that is going to be built, we'd like to know about it.
This is the best time to come before they jump. You know, it's not jumping the gun.
Right.
You're actually at the right moment before they start
Right,
building.
before they start, so I'd really appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Do I have anybody else on call to the public? Thank you very much. Item number 5, presentation of ADOT's public outreach by Kathy Boyle, Public Affairs Office. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor Garino, members of the council, Mr. Dilly, staff, and citizens of Nogales. Once again, I'm Kathy Boyle, Public Affairs Manager for ADOT. Before I begin the presentation, I do want to introduce 2 other members of our Public Affairs team. I have Megan Kidner and Julian Avila. We've divided the state into areas. Of course, I have beautiful southeast Arizona. I do have Cochise, Graham, Greeley, and Santa Cruz counties. Megan has, we call it the Colorado River. She has Mojave, La Paz, and Yuma. And then Julian has northern Arizona. Before I begin, just want to say that we value the relationships we have built with our local jurisdictions over the years. But it's become apparent to us that there needs to be a more of a dialogue outside of our local jurisdictions. And so last year, Director Halakowski directed his public affairs team to go out and visit the business community. And with that, it's taken us a while to put it all together, but Director Halakowski made a public announcement before the Arizona Commerce Authority, as well as at the Rural Transportation Summit, indicating to the transportation folks that ADOT this year is going to contact a minimum of 160 business leaders. And with that, it's because we believe there's a disconnect between in what people understand about transportation and the economic vitality of our state. They really do go hand in hand, because if you can't have economy, you can't have transportation, they have to go hand in hand. And so with that, we want to engage our business leaders with that thought. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go to the computer, and hopefully everybody can hear me. I have a big voice, but I'm Irish, so I use my hands a lot. So, so with that, looking at the status of America's infrastructure, if you look at from the World Economic Forum, where transportation rates and the road infrastructure ranks 20th, rail infrastructure ranks 20th, air infrastructure ranks 31st, and port infrastructure ranks 23rd. So there you see where people in the normal sense really don't understand the need to have transportation and economic development going hand in hand. But transportation does create jobs. Based on the Transportation Infrastructure and Economic Vitality White Paper in February of last year, as you can see by this slide, truck transportation creates about 2.2, rail transportation creates 3.114 others, and air transportation creates 3.61 others. So there is job creation when it comes to transportation. Now in this next thing, we're going to show a brief video on how the current funding structure is for transportation in our state. It's just a short video.
You've got places to go, people to see. You need to be mobile. You want options. You need a modern transportation system. But designing and building that system isn't easy. It takes long-term planning and wise investments. Today, our transportation system is funded from 2 primary sources: the Federal Aid Highway Program and Arizona Highway User Revenue Fund. You'll learn more about both in a minute, but it's important to know these sources get their funding from you. Every time you buy gas, you invest in your transportation system. You buy fuel and your mobility. For every gallon of gas you pump, roughly 18 cents goes toward a federal gas tax, and 19 cents goes towards state gas tax. That's a total of about 37 cents a gallon. And those numbers don't change as gas prices go up or down. In fact, those numbers haven't changed since the early 1990s. You pay the same amount whether gas is $1 or $5 a gallon. Now a little more about those funding sources. The Federal Aid Highway Program is actually over 100 different programs trust fund set up to make sure states spend money based on federal priorities. States must build highway and transit projects that meet those federal priorities before they can receive partial reimbursement. Money in the Arizona Highway User Revenue Fund comes from state gas and fuel taxes, as well as from other sources, like the annual vehicle license tax and auto registration fees. These funds are used to maintain and support Arizona's transportation system, but roads aren't the only thing they're spent on. The fund also supports a wide variety of services and sends money to counties, cities, and towns for local programs and services. Unfortunately, these important revenue sources are declining. You've experienced it in your own wallet. What you purchased in the 1990s was a lot cheaper than it is today. Because of high gas prices and improved technology, we are driving more fuel-efficient cars, and the weakened economy has us keeping those cars a lot longer. And that means less money is collected from vehicle license taxes and registration fees, which are based in part on the value of your car. At a time when we have reduced buying power, we also have more roads to maintain. And don't forget, it's costing us more to maintain them. And because the state's in a fiscal crisis, transportation funding has been redirected to help balance the budget. As a result, the resources for maintaining and enhancing our transportation system and your mobility are substantially smaller than they used to be. Arizona will continue to face these funding challenges. We need solutions to keep your transportation system in good repair, to maximize its performance, and to accommodate future growth. And the Arizona Department of Transportation, we will continue to keep you, the people who invest in and use transportation, informed as we move into the future. Your mobility may depend on it.
Jillian?
What are you trying to do?
Well, I'm gonna have to go back up and
You got it.
bring it up again, sorry about that. We still have a few glitches here trying to work that video into, and how we exit out and all that stuff. But I will say, you're the first city council to see this presentation from the state, so.
You're gonna practice with us.
We are, and we're practicing a lot. We're just,
Okay.
with different stakeholder groups. Now, this slide shows you, on the Highway User Revenue Fund, the 12-month rolling total, how much of a decline it has happened in gas tax and vehicle registration fees. You feel it obviously at the city level. With declining gasoline tax revenue is forcing local and federal governments to search for new funding. Demand for all transportation fuels fell 7.1% last year, the steepest one-year decline since 1950. Federal gasoline tax revenue fell 3% last year, and gas tax is the largest component of HERF at 37.9% of HERF revenues. On this particular slide, then looking at when we went into our 25-year revenue forecast, when we did the long-range transportation plan, we looked at what we anticipate our revenue stream, if it stays current and we don't have any new taxes, it's conservative but realistic, no changes in revenue sources, allocation agreements, or disbursements, growth consistent with recent trends. We anticipate between now and 2035 that ADOT will receive $26.2 billion in revenue. But the state needs are $88.9 billion. And that is the amount of funding required to achieve the defined performance benchmarks that we believe needs to happen in our state. It's focused on the state transportation system in 2035. This does not include any local roads or any of the other in the state, but it's highways, bridges, aviation, freight rail, intercity passenger rail, and transit. So what does that mean? It means that we have a revenue gap of about $63 billion. That we have no idea how we're going to generate that kind of revenue under the current revenue structure that we have. That's why we're going out to the business community and say to them, We need your help. We need to have a dialogue with you to figure out how are we going to have this state grow and have the transportation system that you all expect to have in the state and the multimodal avenues that you would like to have in the state. So that, as you can see, that's a huge gap we have to overcome. And with that, we've had a dramatic philosophical shift as we went through the long-range transportation plan. It doesn't have any of the projects. It's not project focused, it's investment focused. But on the pie chart on your left represents about 2006 to 2010, where ADOT was spending 76% under highway expansion. And granted, that's up in the Phoenix area, but you still see a lot of expansion on I-10 that we've been winding Phoenix to Tucson. Also, if you take a 93 up to the Hoover Dam, we did a lot of expansion there. And so you see modernization, highway preservation, 14%, and highway modernization of 10%. The pie chart on your right is now what the long-range transportation plan is focusing on. We're going to shift to preservation. We've got to preserve what we already have, because it's going to be more expensive if we don't do that. So it's now 34% for preservation, 29% for modernization, 27% for highway expansion, and still travel choice 10%. So once again, there's a reason why we need to engage the business community. And what the next steps that we would like to have is, obviously, when we meet with the business leaders, encourage them to sit down with their policymakers, both at the federal and state level, and encourage them to understand that transportation is vital to the economic development of our state. And with that, besides the business community, we're targeting certain industries. We're targeting chambers of commerce, associations, economic development group, but key industries in certain sectors of our state. For my area, I'm going to be concentrating on mining because I know that's a big employer in southeast Arizona. I also have healthcare and education, but we're focusing a lot on what the Arizona Commerce Authority have identified as key industries, such as solar energy, aerospace and defense, those kinds of things. So it's really, that's what my job is going to be, with Julian and Megan and our other members of our team are going to do this entire year, is to spend the time to visit with the business community. We're still going to be here for you, but our focus is going to be on engaging the business community and figuring out how are we going to bridge that gap, what do we need to do in order to have the state grow. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Dillon.
Kathy, thank you for being here to test out your presentation on our,
yes.
On our community.
So far, so good.
Thank you.
A couple of questions.
Okay.
Can you go back to the one pie chart where you had the now versus later?
Yes.
How are you proposing to get buy-in with the switch between expansion to preservation? I know for years I've heard the dilemma being communicated by ADOT. It's one thing to build, and everybody thinks build, 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 but there's no thought on how, okay, maintaining, and there's a cost associated with maintaining. So how are you going to fundamentally make the shift when growth continues to be such a problem in Arizona, and there's going to be the constant cry for expansion?
Well, I think it will be apparent when the tentative 5-year, we're out to right now seeking public comment on the 5-year construction program, but basically that's where the money is going to go in the sub-programs when it comes to paving preservation. There isn't a lot of money to do any expansion outside of what MAG and PAG pay for with their half-cent sales tax for what they set aside for transportation. As I understand, for the rest of the state of Arizona, there's only going to be about $10 million available to do statewide. That's not a lot of money.
I'm sorry, did you say 10 million?
10 million.
Okay.
There's not a lot of money there.
So we need the 10 million for Santa Cruz County.
But wish.
So, Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up question real quick. You make a pitch that your effort is to approach the business community. In a state where we're struggling to climb out of the effects of this recession, targeting the business community for help on solving the gap problem, how are you weighing that with our ability to stay competitive nationally and globally as it relates to being able to attract new business. What's the thought process with ADOT along those lines?
And I think when it comes to engaging the business community, hopefully they'll understand that they need to push transportation, because I'm hoping by the end of this year, if I should come back to Nogales or any other part of the state, instead of having transportation being number 20th, it's at least in the top 5 of issues. And especially for the business community, if they want to move their goods and services and they want to have that ability to do that, they know they're going to need to have a transportation system, and they need to be engaged in that conversation in order to meet the needs of what it is that they do as a business.
And so in terms of comparing Arizona with other states, they're doing it different? The business community is more involved, more engaged in terms of ranking transportation higher on the scale? Are they opening their wallets? Are they doing it different in other states?
Mr. Ely, I don't know for sure in terms of what other states are doing, but for Arizona, this is what Director Halikowski believes is necessary in order to have more voices and more people understand the need for transportation. Really, it's like a given. When you turn on your light, your light switch, the light's going to come on. When people turn on their water faucet, the water comes out, it's clean, it's drinkable. When it comes to transportation, there's a road. They feel it should be in good repair, that they can drive on it.
Perfect.
And of course we know when it's not in good repair, the phone calls come in. It's the same thing for us at ADOT, is the fact that we don't want to be given as taken for granted, and it's because of what we're going to face between now and 2035.
So my final question, and I appreciate your responses, I really do.
Well, I appreciate your questions.
My final question is, on a local level, we obviously on a smaller scale, we experience transportation issues.
Yes.
And in the state, right? And we understand the importance of maintaining expansion, the whole works just on a smaller scale. You appreciate that?
Yes, I do.
As a local community, we have as our primary funding source for streets the HERF fund, much like ADOT has as your primary source. Correct. Maybe you know where I'm going with this.
I think I do.
As we look to that funding source and we see it, at least in Nogales' perspective, we see it over the course of the last several years continuing to decline because of fund sweeps from the state.
Mm-hmm.
We have local constituencies that are saying, hey, why aren't you doing this and this and this with our roads? Why do we continue to have roads that are rutted and potholed and you name it? We've got the whole gamut of infrastructure problems. And sometimes our easy answer is, well, the state keeps taking our HERF money. It might be easier to sell the idea that we need to come together as a community, as a much larger community, as a state community, to solve the gap problems when the state isn't continuing to raid our HERF funds and make it harder for us to solve our own problems.
Right.
And so if this is a venue to take messages back to the director and whoever else is involved in the decision-making process, I would ask that you send that message back to the state.
And hopefully by our presentation and having a better understanding of transportation funding, that citizens as well as the business community can understand that when those HERF funds are swept by the legislature, it trickles down to the local level, so that if you want something to happen, maybe you should engage that conversation with your representatives and your state senator and state representatives and tell them, these are the effects of what happens when you've taken the money out of the HERF fund. This is what's happening to the folks in Nogales. So we're hoping that they have that dialogue and that they hear from their local citizens and realize that they need to reevaluate that decision in terms of sweeping that money, because it does come down and it hurts the local level most. I understand that.
You know, Kathy, on the preservation side, in a way, I'm glad it's going 34%, because our principal roads here in Nogales are Grand Avenue, Arroyo, and Mariposa Road. They're state right-of-ways, and they're the ones that get the majority of the heavy traffic, and very far apart when ADOT comes and does some repair on it. We had the Mariposa done recently, which was great. It was a great job. But Grand Avenue right now needs crack seal, needs chip seal, needs the lines painted, at the intersection of Mariposa Road. Are we gonna get some of that preservation from that big chunk right there, that slice of the pie?
You know, that is something that all of the districts fight for when it comes to. So I will share this with your district engineer,
Yes.
Mr. Emery, and
Yes.
I will make
I
sure
would
that
appreciate
he
that
carries
because-
that message along when he has to meet with his other district
Yeah,
engineers.
we have a lot of heavy traffic, that's
I
the
know you
problem
do.
with the
I know you
commerce and with the trucks coming in, and a lot of them don't just jump from the port to I-19, they travel it within the city streets, which belong to ADOT.
Yeah.
And we hope that you guys keep those highways, Mariposa Road and Grand Avenue forever. Don't ever decide to give them on the turn back plan to the city of Nogales, because we don't want them.
I'll make sure that they know that too.
But I hope we can get a little bit of help on that, because right now we need crack seal on them, and some repair on some potholes, but maybe chip seal and some painting. For the preservation part of it, it'll make them go a little longer. Mr. Banks, were you going to say something? Yes.
I've got a question. You, the monies that are for highway are from the lottery? A lot of the lottery tickets that are being bought from people from Mexico.
You mean the LTAF funding? I know that at one point went to transit. I know that was removed by the legislature in
Yes.
terms of the funding for transit. During our economic situation, the state phase, the legislature made those changes to the LTAF funding.
That was for transportation, not repairs.
No, it was not.
Yeah.
No. Just for transit.
Yes, Mr. Mason.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Kathy, as especially northern, where around Maricopa County and all that, has there been thoughts about paying the toll roads, to have toll roads? They're all over now California, they're all back east. Has Arizona considered going toll roads?
We did put a request into the Federal Highway Administration on I-15. It was not selected. Basically, it wasn't selected because we weren't going to expand it. We were just going to do some very needed repairs. There are several bridges on I-15. If you don't know where that is, it's in the little corner of Mojave County between Mesquite, Nevada and St. George, Utah. And it's mainly used by the residents of those two communities along the truckers too that move goods and services in their trucks. And we need to make about $250 million worth of repairs, which we don't have the funds available to do so. So we were hoping that, because the FHWA was looking at 3 pilot projects to see about adding tolls. And with that, it wasn't approved because it was just going to be existing. The other states that did win it is because they were expanding their roadways in Missouri, Virginia, and North Carolina, and they were expanding their roads. But to your answer, yes, we're open to tolling, absolutely. But it does have to be where, it can't be on an existing roadway. You would have to expand upon that as a possible way of looking at, but certainly ADOT is open to that. We're also open to public-private partnerships, which is we call them P3s. And so we have that. So that's where the business community will come in and talk about that with them and to see if that's an avenue that they wish to explore down the road with ADOT. But yes, we're open to all kinds of suggestions, but obviously it's one that has to be talked a lot about and figuring out how you're going to do that when it comes to tolling.
Well, Kathy, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I'll let you
Very
continue
much.
on, and I'll
That was a great
excuse
presentation.
me.
Kathy, if there's anything we can do to help ADOT in the cause, let us know.
Yes.
Well, we
Yes.
appreciate, like I say, your letting us be your focus group here. But I've had an opportunity to visit with your chamber executive, Olivia, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to present this to chamber members. And like I say, we're just taking this on the road and having as much dialogue as we possibly can throughout the state. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't forget to leave a check on the way out.
Okay.
Item number 6, consideration and possible action regarding the recommendation of a liquor license application for Mr. Kenneth Kwiatkowski for Circle K Stores Inc., DBA Circle K Store, number 3443168 North Carl's Jr. Drive, number 10, beer and wine store.
Mr. Mayor, so
Go ahead.
on option number 1.
Second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Number 7, update on the Palo Duro Golf Course. Mr. Dilly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Previously requested by the council was to receive an update on the Palo Duro Golf Course, which is somewhat separate but still part and parcel with the restaurant issue out there. I will let you know that in consultation with Joe tonight, we're probably a week, maybe a week and a half out from having RFPs out to the public on the restaurant. So once we get the results back from that, we're hoping that maybe we can even hit maybe the April meeting. If not, we'll have a special meeting with you to have the results of the RFP on the restaurant. This discussion tonight is specific to the golf course itself. Staff has explored a couple of different options. There have been a lot of concerns that have come into City Hall, obviously to you as elected officials, about the status of the golf course and what the general public can expect out there. So in terms of looking at options, one option would be just to let the water flow, turn the sprinkler system on and start mowing lawn. Not really operating a golf course, but mowing some lawn out there. The other option, obviously, is the golf course operation itself. What we've done tonight, and I'll have Mr. Batchelor come up and present the findings of the analysis to you. We've taken a look, just done a cost-benefit analysis on both of those options, and we have some thoughts along those lines, and more importantly, we'd like to hear your thoughts on how you're feeling about things, what direction you'd like to take. Joe Machado and I are still working on the RFP for actually going out to have somebody operate the golf course. That's down the road a little bit further than the restaurant is, but we're continuing to work on that. It's very complicated, more complicated than I thought it was ever going to be, and I'm sure you can appreciate that. Nevertheless, in the interim, we have to at least make a decision, and those options are to do nothing, probably to mow the lawn, or to get engaged and operate a golf course. And hopefully tonight and the information we're going to share with you will aid you in being able to provide some direction to staff. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
Batchelor.
Bailey.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as I was tasked to put together some information for you regarding the maintenance portion of the golf course, I concluded that it really is a specialty in itself, a specialty that truly I don't see anybody citywide, personnel-wise, has that expertise, experience, or specialty to manage a golf course. I may not be the most qualified person up here to potentially answer your questions. However, the information I did provide, I think, is close enough, or gives you at least a ballpark figure as to what some related costs might be to just water and to mow. If you truly want to move forward in a very quick manner to run and operate and manage a golf course, I think that there's some numbers that I've provided you that give you some idea of what those costs will be.
Are you going to walk us through those numbers?
They do have
Yes.
I'll go from one extreme to the other. To water and mow 9 fairways in and I'm estimating that to be about 37 acres. Okay, some will be shorter, some will be longer than others, and that's just fairways. I'm estimating that it would require 2 additional personnel, 2 fairway mowers. The 2 personnel would come at a cost of $58,000, and that includes all employee-related expenses. 2 fairway mowers, that would be a combined total of $85,000. 1 utility cart would be $8,000. Water for 1 year would be $40,000. And electrical for that 1 year would be $25,000. That total, just to water, mow, the electrical, and the personnel involved, would be approximately $216,000. So that would be.
Okay, this is just the fairways, this is not the greens.
This is just fairways, and this does not take into account any type of weed management. I believe if I turn water on right now, 95% of it is going to be weeds. Okay, so if there's no effort committed to managing the weeds up front, and if we don't follow that up with some type of overseeding, we're going to end up mowing weeds, and that's all it's going to be. There might be some residual Bermuda that's still standing, but a majority of it is already dead and long gone. Any question on that low end?
I'm sorry, I do just have a clarifying question. You said this is nine fairways.
9 fairways.
So do you have a thought what those fairways would be, which ones we would do?
I don't have a preference, or I wouldn't have an idea of which ones to recommend. I would guess that the fairways that fall within the neighborhoods and in between sections of neighborhoods would be a priority. There's some of the golf course that is, I believe, the newer section that is well behind all the houses, and I don't think that that would be the prudent way to go, because there's really no neighborhoods or homes surrounding those fairways.
Thank you.
If the city was to decide to move forward and manage the golf course on its own, and this is excluding personnel and some other golf carts, fuel costs, and any golf club or golf course clubhouse personnel, to reconstruct 1 green, and this includes the bunkers. So it'd be the bunkers, the aprons, the greens. The industry standard is $4 to $7 per square foot. According to the United States Golf Association, most greens average between 6,000 and 7,000 square feet. We're kind of being real conservative and saying the ones that we actually walked and measured are roughly average of 4,000 square feet, so much less than the industry standard. So cost per green would range between $16,000 to $28,000. If you multiply that times 18 greens, that doesn't even include a green for putting near the driving range or for chipping, so there could be another 2. This is just for 18 greens. It would be $288,000 to $504,000 just for reconstructing the greens, the sand traps, the aprons, all that kind of stuff. Okay. There's some additional costs for weed management and fertilizer. For the entire golf course for herbicides, which really isn't too bad, it's about $4,200. For fertilizer, it's anticipated about $6,000. For seed, an annual cost of about $30,000. The average water cost for the entire golf course, I'm just estimating at about $100,000. Electrical, the total cost for electrical would range about $55,000 per year. And then as far as equipment is concerned, we would need about, to purchase would be about $345,000. So if you add all that up, it comes close to $1 million, a little bit over $1 million. And that doesn't even include personnel.
And that's to get it up and going.
That's just to get it up and going.
Okay.
So that's just materials, equipment, water, electricity. Doesn't include
Not personnel.
Go ahead, Mr. Parada.
You know, when I asked information about the greens at the golf course, but I wanted not the state of the art like you presented now. Because if you get a bunch of weeds going out there, who's going to cut them? The city is. Right? But I was only going after water the 9 holes and cut and mow the grass. Don't get state of the art machinery to do it. Get what you have for the baseball fields, so use some machinery to just cut the grass. Because you're going to have either a dust ball or a hazardous weeds with fire. So, you know, I'm not looking for a state of the art. I'm looking for something to look kind of nice. The people are already suffering on the valuation of their homes. If we can do something to cut corners and just water it and mow it down. Not to run the golf course, but to just have it kind of green, like a garden, that's about it. I didn't ask anything to come to the state of the art.
All right, Mr. Dillon.
Councilmember Parada, I believe that's the first number that Mr. Bachelier provided all of us tonight. That first number is not state-of-the-art equipment. It's roughly turning water on. We do have to buy some more mowers, but they're not state-of-the-art. They're not what we would use if we were running a golf course by any stretch of the imagination. But we do need more equipment, we'll need more personnel, and there's going to be a water and electric cost, and that's the first number that he provided to you tonight.
Mr. Bachelier, what would you think of if we could jointly do a project between you and Public Works or the street department and clean up the ponds and recharge the ponds so we can, you know, because to me I think that visually looks pretty bad, and then try the best possible to maintain it. Hopefully we can get some green on it, because I mean $268,000 is a good chunk not to have a plane, just to clean it up and to mow it and to do that. Did you think about that? You know how the ponds look pretty bad, and I think that you know looks worse than anything else. You know, recharge the ponds and clean up that area, so we can have walking trails and paths, so people can use it as a green area to walk while somebody comes back and they finalize the opportunities for us to put it out to bid or find somebody that's interested in taking over that project.
I guess my position is not that I'm opposed or that staff's opposed to doing anything. I guess the point is that whatever we do, there's going to be an additional cost to the city.
I understand.
I guess that's all we're asking of you is exactly, you know, what is it that the city council wants, you know, at what level do you want us to commit our resources to? Realize if we use our own personal equipment, it's kind of, if you would, and I'm going to equate it to, if I took a push lawnmower and mowed Memorial Park, would be similar to what I would consider if we were to use our equipment that we use right now mowing the fairway. So not that it can't do it, but over time, we're going to lose time, we're going to lose money, we're going to lose equipment.
Lose efficiency.
Yes.
Well, you know what I think, since this is, you know, an update and a discussion, what I think maybe is we have rough numbers. We have an idea of the cost and what you believe that the stages or what levels we can bring it up to, you know, at least to make it look nice like Mr. Parra says, but maybe what we need to do is probably sit down as a council and discuss this to see how this can be presented or come up with a number, because we're working on the budget right now. This is the time for us to make any decisions at this point, if we plan to make any decisions on that golf course to spend any money. And I want to thank you very much for the work you've done, Mr. Bachelier, and it's important because, you know, I know that we weren't in the business of having a golf course, you know, since you've been around, that's for sure. So, but I mean, I remember the first time I talked to you and I said, what do you think it would cost? And you threw a number out there and it was close to $500,000. And now you come up with numbers that are actual numbers that it would probably cost us. And you were right with the guest. And I guess.
And some additional food for thought also is, it's difficult to try and imagine what the citizenry will expect from the city. If we begin to mow fairways, I mean, is that going to be satisfactory? I don't know. But I think that weighs into, you know, whatever level of commitment the city wants to move forward as far as maintenance of that golf course is concerned.
Yeah, and but you know, our main, the way I feel, the main thing for me at least, you know, and I'm not sure about the council, I would like to get somebody to get that golf course and get it up, somebody that's professional to get into it, and I think that's the responsibility of us here, not you, to find somebody to take on that golf course, and also the restaurant and the pro shop and everything. So, you know, what was tasked of you was to see what it would cost, according to Mr. Parada's idea. But now we have numbers, and you know, numbers are going to lie. So it's up to us to make a decision on how we're going to treat this. The way I look at it, we should find somebody to take care of that golf course and then, but really take care of it and put it up to par so that it can be a golf course, not just a green area full of weeds that's being mowed. I'm talking a golf course. Because a lot of the homes that were built there were built around a golf course. So it's important. That's what I think. I think we should follow through on that. Yes, Mr. Lane.
A final thought, at least on my end. Obviously, Joe and I will work as fast as we can on getting that RFP out. A message received loud and clear. I did hear another suggestion, though, maybe in the interim. Do you want staff to maybe try to put together a plan to re-energize a pond or two out there?
I would like to see that.
Well, we can at least put some costs together. What I'm talking about along those ends is it's different than what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is a maintenance issue. But if we want to do kind of a one-time type rejuvenation and just get something there for the public to benefit from, at least in the interim, you know, that's more along the lines of what we can really kind of help with in terms of public works or parks and rec. You know, we can put our heads together and figure out if there's something we can do to help, and if it requires coming back to council with, you know, a little capital project, then we can do that and consider that as an interim type step to at least provide an amenity to the general public or to the area while we wait for our project.
So Julie, if you re-energize a pond or two, whatever, that's a selling point for somebody that wants to look at the golf course.
We're looking at home to buy, really.
Just a little bit that we do, and we've discussed this about the restaurant and the building and all that area. If we can get that occupied with a real good restaurant, that's a selling point. The golf course is the big picture. But if we re-energize one of the ponds and just clean around the trails, you know, where the golf carts used to travel, people can use it as walking trails, as we start working on it, and then when you get the RFP, we'll put it out there and see if we get anybody to get the hook.
Well, if everybody feels that's a generally good idea, then we'll put our heads together as staff and figure out what we can do to make something happen out there in the interim.
You know, as least cost as possible. If we're going to come up with these numbers, we need a study session.
Yes.
If we go anywhere near $268,000, we need a study session.
I'll tell you right now, that's not in my mind right now.
Okay.
I mean, if we can do something, we're going to do it. And if it's a marginal cost, then we'll bring it back to you and say, hey, we think this is worth it, we'll get something going in the interim, but if it's not, we'll let you know that we're just gonna have to, push this RFP out and get it going as fast as we can. Okay, fair enough to everybody?
Fair enough.
Okay, okay.
Mr. Bachiller, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marcel.
Item number 8, mid-year financial report, finance. Let's see, we got $268,000 here.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I would have made that recommendation a few minutes ago. Kind of the moment we've all been waiting for. We kind of look forward to this particular report. The numbers as they flow into City Hall are slow, right? During the late November, December, and the first part of January months, they tend to be our strongest sales tax generating months. Knowing that our city lives and dies by the sales tax, we have to wait until this point in time during the year when our sales tax numbers come in, so we know exactly where we are. That's why, although we're into March, the first part of March, we titled this the mid-year report because it really reflects where we're at about mid-year, and that gives us an idea based off of history what we can expect to, in terms of the conclusion of the year, and more importantly, what we need to be thinking about in our minds as we approach the budget sessions and looking to next year. So that being said, I've asked the Finance Department, under the direction of Terry, to prepare a presentation and to give that tonight. And if there's any questions, Terry and I will kind of tag team that. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening, members of the council and the general public. This evening, I will, Terry Ramirez, Finance Director. This evening, I will provide the City of Nogales 2011-2012 interim budget and performance assessment. Now, I'm going to start off with the mayor's comment. The $216,000, well, the pressure's on now. You'll see where we stand as of January 31st. Excuse me. What this presentation is comprised of, we'll go over the general fund revenue sources, the state shared revenues, the sales tax revenues, ambulance fees. We'll also review revenues and expenditures as of January 31st. We'll look at current budget numbers, year-to-date actual through January 31st, and what we project will be the year-end for each fund. We'll also look at some trend analysis for the last 4 years that will be comprised of the general, HERF, enterprise funds consisting of sewer, water, sanitation, and we'll give you a brief update on the upcoming budget state share revenues and retirement cost increases. So we'll give you a preview of what is to come. To lay down the foundation of the general fund, I'm going to highlight the general fund sources. The largest being the largest being tax revenue, and that's your lavender color. When I updated this slide, the update didn't catch up to the one that I have here. But anyhow, thus far, we've collected $6.6 million in terms of tax revenue. In terms of budget, that is 56% of the general fund budget. However, as of January 31st, we have collected 62% year to date through January 31st. The interesting information here is, as of January 31st, in order to meet our budget goals, we really should have collected a 58%. So that means that we are up 4%. Basically what that means is that the December sales tax were good, but that's through January 31st. Historically, the December and January sales taxes will peak, and then we'll see a decline between February through the end of the fiscal year. The second source is, of course, our state share revenue. Our state share revenue, we're right at 58% with 2.8% collected thus far. Another revenue source for the general fund, which is a large amount, is our license fees. License fees we've collected thus far at $501,000. It represents 3% of the budget, but we're at 98% year to date. And lastly, in terms of general fund revenue sources, I'm going to touch on the provided service fees. These provided service fees, we are year-to-date at 44%, and that does represent 6% of the budget. I will provide you the overall picture for the general fund, but I wanted to review the revenue sources for the general fund to get you familiar with it. State shared revenues, what we have here is a graph showing the past 4 years. What Mr. Dooley touched on was state shared revenues, and what we see here is a trend that state shared revenues have decreased. We heard that earlier from the previous ADOT presentation. Between fiscal year 08 through 09, we received 6.4 million, and fiscal year 11-12, we are projected to receive 4.7. Significant drop in state share revenues that affects our general fund. You can see the decline year after year. I will touch on the state share revenue at the end of the presentation, but just to give you a preview, they anticipate to increase this next coming year at an increase of 21%. So that is good news.
That's not on HERF though.
That's not on HERF, this is just state share.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We'll touch HERF later. Sales tax revenues, you can see the trend in 08-09. We were at 9.7, 9.10, 9.6. Fiscal year 10-11, 9.7, and currently 9.8. That's what we project. So you can see the trend that it has definitely increased. I also wanted to share with you ambulance fees. The trend for the last 4 years. You'll notice that in 08-09 it was at 517, and how it has increased over the past 3 years. And we project that we will end this year at $756,000, few $1,000 increase over last year.
Net revenue.
Now, here's a summary of all funds. What this slide represents are revenues and expenditures through January 31st, and also fiscal year projections. I want to highlight the general fund. Our current budget is 19 million in terms of revenues and expenditures. Our year-to-date actual in terms of revenues is 11 million, and expenditures at 9.8. That represents 58% year-to-date of the budget in terms of revenues, and 52 expenditures. What that means is that the 58 and the 52% are the numbers that we really need to be looking at. It means we have more revenues thus far to January 31st than expenditures. And we have to attribute that to holding the line. The department directors and management have definitely done a remarkable job in holding the line in terms of our expenditures exceeding our revenues. And in terms of HERF, our year-to-date HERF revenues have not come in at what was projected. Year-to-date HERF revenues is $817,000. That is a 47% year-to-date. It should really be at 58%. Okay, this is one source that has dipped. Our expenditures are at $748,000. Even though we're not at 58% where we should be, our expenditures thus far have not exceeded our revenues, which is a positive $69,000 that we can.
Terry, let me interrupt you just for a second. Touching on this revenue stream for HERF and not being at the 58%. These numbers are provided to us by the state when we put our budget together, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so the state must have been off on their projections. Do you have any other explanation for that then?
No, I do not.
Okay.
Moving on to the sewer fund. Our revenues are at $955,000, expenditures over $1 million. Our revenues are at 56% versus 42% in terms of expenditures. We're all familiar that the general fund subsidizes the sewer fund due to the Nogales International Wastewater Treatment Plant. But there is good news because our expenditures at 42% are less than the revenues at 56%. Moving on to the water fund, we have the same picture. Revenues are more than our expenditures, and so in terms of our water fund, we're at 57% in terms of revenues, and our expenditures at 48%. And moving on to sanitation, we're at 1.4, which represents 58%, and expenditures at 1.2. Again, you can see that these year-to-date percentages in terms of revenues over expenditures are much more than the expenditures altogether. We've also provided a picture in terms of what we think that we will end up in terms of year-end, what our projections are at. And so for general fund, even though we have more revenues at this point because of our sales tax collections, those sales tax collections will eventually be utilized throughout between February and June, but not all. We are projecting a positive cash flow of $475,000. So we're projecting collecting all of the revenue that we projected at 100% and expenditures at 98%. In terms of HERF, we are projecting that there'd be more expenditures than revenues, even though the water fund will subsidize the HERF fund for this fiscal year, and we anticipate a $90,000 loss. Sewer, we project there is a general fund subsidy, and the general fund subsidy will be, we project there will be $539,000, 64%. So sewer, as you'll notice, it will be a wash because whatever amount the sewer fund did not collect for the expenditures, it will be subsidized by general fund. If you remember going back to the budget, normally we subsidize up to $950,000. That's the cost for the treatment plant. However, general fund doesn't subsidize all of it, but a good portion of it. So depending on where we're at the end of the year in terms of sewer revenues, the general fund will subsidize the difference as it has been budgeted for.
Terry, I don't want to leave with a misimpression on the condition of the sewer, and to reemphasize the importance of the action that the council took recently regarding the water and sewer rates. In reality, the sewer fund is projected to close at the end of this year with a deficit of $539,000, which is going to be subsidized by our general fund as part of our budget approval that took place earlier this year. So it really continues to operate in a deficit condition, and I wanted to make sure that was pointed out a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Dooley. And to point out, I'd also like to point out that we have projected that we would subsidize from the general fund $837,000 with the increase in rates of the sewer rates. We're now projecting that it will be $539 versus that $837. So that is due to the increase in sewer rates.
Thank you.
And water, the water fund also received, you also adopted an increase for water rates, and we anticipate to project a $128,000 positive cash flow. And sanitation, we also project that because expenditures are about 10% less than our revenues, that will come out positive at $116,000. So overall, in terms of expenditure sanitation, we anticipate 94%.
Terry, on the sanitation, on the sanitation, the net plus at the end of the year, is any of that attributed to the audit that was performed?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, and I will touch on sanitation a bit, and
perfect.
And I do show there is a graph in your PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next slide.
Mr. Coppola.
Manuel Coppola, Nogales International. My question is if the subsidies are included in this projection here on the general fund.
The subsidy for the general fund?
The subsidies for water and sewer?
Just sewer.
Oh, for just sewer, that's right. Is it included in the projection on expenses for the general fund? Or would it be in addition to this?
It would be, it's included in
Terry, it's included in this number right here, right?
it. Right.
Okay.
The next slide shows, it's basically, I'm just drawing a picture as to what the historical data has been in terms of revenues over expenditures for general fund. And you can see that the blue line is revenues. Oops, excuse me. And the blue line is below the expenditures. So what that means is that for 2 years, the expenditures were more than what we brought into the city. Please note that for fiscal year 10-11, that turned around. We had more revenues and expenditures, and we project to have the same outcome for this fiscal year.
Mr. Meredith and members of the council, this is a really powerful message in terms of an accomplishment for the city. If you can recall back to that budget year when I came on board, we were facing quite a large deficit, and we talked a lot about changes in the economy, changes in how we do business on an operations standpoint, governing our expenditures so that it doesn't matter what the budget is that was approved. If we don't have the money coming in, we're not spending. And that change in thought process and philosophy, coupled with good direction, good management, or policy setting by the council in the form of a budget, has really helped us generate this kind of response in terms of turning things around, which is a very positive message to the entire community.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, we have another graph for general fund, and the numbers that I really want to point out to you is, as soon as I get my folder here, for fiscal year 8-9, we had more expenditures and revenues, and it's that same information that we reviewed, but if we look at fiscal year 10-11, our revenues at 18.9 and our expenditures at 18.6. Okay, that's when we turned it around. And for this fiscal year, our revenues are at 11 million and our expenditures are at 9.8 year to date. And we project to end the year at 19 million in revenues and 18 in expenditures with a surplus of 475,000. The other information is our fund balance, and basically we have a graph showing our fund balance from 08-09. You'll see that it drops and then it starts picking up based on the surplus. Again, the same is basically the same picture, but in a different form.
Go ahead, Mr. Hans.
Yeah, Terry, when you're showing there that 400, go back to that. You're showing $475,000 in the black. Does that include again, what Mr. Coppola was asking, is that including the top deal, including the subsidy for the sanitation department?
Yes.
Or the sanitation department will be taking the money from that?
Oh, excuse me, not the sanitation department. I thought you were asking about the sewer.
Sewer, I'm sorry, yes, sewer.
You're talking about sewer, right? Yes, it does.
So it includes the 500 some odd thousand,
Right.
which is coming out of water.
Which is, no, it's coming out of general
It's
fund.
coming out of general fund.
Sewer is coming out of the general fund. Water is helping to subsidize the HERF.
All right, moving on to HERF. HERF provides a different picture, unfortunately. What we have here in terms of HERF is our revenues is the blue line that's down here. In 08-09, our revenues were 1.9 and our expenditures were 2.5, huge gap. This is the first year where HERF revenue dropped significantly. In 2009-10, we definitely closed the gap. Not close enough, but we definitely closed the gap in 9-10 and 10-11. And in 11-12, there's still a gap, however, there is a subsidy. But this basically shows that HERF revenues have dropped significantly, and well, you'll see the trend that they continue to drop.
So this will be an issue as we get to the budget discussions and how we really solve this problem. Obviously, it's not sustainable like this. Some decisions have to be made to make it so that it is sustainable, which is our job as we come together.
Again, this is a chart that shows fund balance in terms of HERF and how there is a deficit. Oops, excuse me. If we look at the bottom line that says fund balance is end of year, we're at a deficit of 125, and when we increase another 125 for the following year, we're at a deficit of 243. And because 2011 and 12 will provide a subsidy from the water fund, will come out even. But at the end of the year overall, we project that there will be a deficit on HERF in the sum of over $300,000.
And so to personalize that, it's kind of like Terry. It's like our own personal bank accounts. What you're talking about in terms of fund balance is whether or not there's any kind of savings in that particular fund. And when we've got either black or red, if we have red, that means that year after year it's accumulated a debt in a sense, and we don't have a balance there.
That's correct. The next one is sewer. We see the same trend here with sewer, where our revenues are much lower, much less than the expenditures. Excuse me. Expenditures are higher than revenues, and you'll see revenues are down here, and sewer expenditures are up here. That has got to do with the treatment plant, and in 0809, and you'll see that it definitely dropped, and it peaked up again, and it's dropped, and we all know that through the budget process that the sewer fund is subsidized by the general fund.
So on this particular graph, we've got what we see happening here is we've got some downfall off of the construction of the project and the upstart costs of the sewer treatment plant. And we see the spike there in 2010 and 11. We experienced that, and then we got pretty aggressive in going back to IBWC and saying, hey, sharpen your pencil. This isn't going to work for us. You keep adding these. We want actual costs, not these inflated projected costs, which is why they've come back down again. And then I would suspect, Terry, if we were to be able to forecast this out one more year, because of the rate adjustment, that revenue line would go up a little bit to even close that gap there and help us out a little bit more.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. Okay, what I want to point out to you here in terms of revenue is we start off with our operating income or loss, and you'll see the deficit starting from fiscal year 8-9 all the way to present. They went from 1.2 to 625,000, 811,000. Thus far, we are at 104,000, and we project that it be at the end of the year 539,000 that will be subsidized by the general fund. That's basically what I'm illustrating in this graph. I think that this is the most important piece that you need to see in terms of understanding sewer. Where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're going to be, based on our projections. And so now we move on to water, and this is a different picture than what we've seen in terms of sewer and HERF. And our revenues are the blue line, which is up here, starting with the first year at 2.6 versus expenditures at 2.3. And you can see the trend analysis. We've definitely had more revenues than expenses. And if you notice our fiscal year 11-12, that the revenue line is trending up, and that's based on the adoption of the increase of rates. We will experience that for approximately 1/4 of this year, because that's effective March 2nd. And again, we've got another graph that basically shows the fund balance, where we're at. So sorry about this pointer. You'll see 8.9 starts off at 8.7 and it moves up. So you can definitely see that we've got more revenue than expenditures, and that you can see that on the top where it says operating income. We start off with fiscal year 08-09 at a positive cash flow of 382, 736 the next year, 83,000, and year-to-date actual 247, and we project for it to be at 128 year-end. We also take into consideration what we have budgeted in terms of expenditures, and water fund has large expenditures, as do the other enterprise funds such as sewer and sanitation. So that's all been considered in terms of our projections. And moving on to the sanitation fund, here we have a different picture altogether because it crosses. We've got revenues that start dipping from fiscal year 9 to 10, but they go back up, and I have to attribute this to holding the line. When I look at those reports, expenditure reports on a monthly basis, I noticed that fiscal year 10-11, they held the line. Public Works really held the line in terms of sanitation, and you can see it from 10-11 to 11-12. So that's excellent in terms of staff holding the line, and expenditures have definitely dropped. And here's a better picture in terms of sanitation, and we can always go back if we need to. But what I want to point out to you in sanitation is the bottom line, our last number, sorry, this pointer's not working. It starts off at 2,058,000. Oh, here we go.
Move your finger.
There we go. Start off at 2,058,000, and it increases. Our deficit increases to 2.2 the following year. But you see, the following year that it drops from 2.2 to 2 million. And this year, because we are holding the line, there's more revenue than expenditures. We project to have even though it's a negative, but the deficit amount is definitely decreasing from 2 million to 1.8. So that is definitely progress, and you can see it on the graph.
And what this means is that over time, over history, the sanitation department had operated in the red so much that it accumulated that kind of debt. In that, basically, it borrowed from general fund or it borrowed from another enterprise fund to that extent over time. I mean, we're talking a lot of time here. And so now what we're seeing, because we're holding the line, we're being more efficient, we're doing our audits, we're making sure that we're working on collections, we're being more, I said efficient, but we're actually looking at the routes, making sure that our guys are out there doing what they're supposed to be doing. You can see that we're starting to take nicks and dinks out of that debt, hopefully with the goal of being able to come back in to total black. You can see on an annual basis up there, you had a negative 19,000, negative 208,000, and then we had a positive 264, and we keep moving into the positive. That's going to continually repay back that debt over time, and that's exactly where we need to be. And we're doing that without affecting the rates. We're not coming back and asking for more rates from the payers. And I did that specifically because I felt that there were enough efficiencies to be gained in the sanitation department that we didn't have to wrap that into the utility side with the water and sewer. Otherwise, we would have had the consultant look at that too.
Mr. Mayor? I think also, Mr. Dilly, a little discussion on the new contract with Tucson Recycling that actually dropped that contract dropped by like 20%, I believe, right?
Absolutely.
That's where we can see that huge drop here in the money, right, from the old contract.
That's right.
That basically tended to way over charges.
So if you go back to the revenue, you'll see the revenue pop up a little bit because we've got some audits going on and we're gaining efficiencies there. And you see the expenditures go down in large part because of this contract that the council approved with our contractor, Southwest Tucson, right? But also the efficiencies in operations. All that combined is a very positive picture with the intent of paying back this deficit as soon as we can.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Talking about efficiencies in other departments, but going to the water, there was a valley in 2009, 2010. We went from 2.3 million to 1.7 million, and then it started spiking up to 2.45. Does anybody have the institutional memory to tell us what happened, why it went down so much, and why it is now climbing so high?
Mr. Coppola? Unfortunately, I can't provide an answer for you. Good point though, because there is a huge gap there. We can definitely look at that and determine why our expenditures drop significantly as well as our revenues. We can definitely provide that information to you. Mr. Dilly, I'm going to look to you as to what format we can provide this information to him and the council.
Okay, we'll follow up on that.
Thank you, Ted.
And I have a few budget updates for you. There's good news that state urban revenue sharing is going to increase for our next budget by 21%. Last time I looked at the number, I believe it was 200,000 or so. It's going to definitely help our budget in terms of the general fund. And we're also going to experience an increase in the state shared sales tax between 1% to 3%. Those numbers should be coming to us. The actual estimates should be coming to us shortly. I anticipate within the next week to week and a half, as we are in contact with the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, and I do sit in on a conference call on a weekly basis based on the bills that go through the House. And so the latest news is that we should have those actual numbers within the next week and a half. So that is good news in terms of the general fund. On the other hand, as there are some fixed costs that continue to increase, and those we can't get away from. And as I stood here before you last year and provided you with an update mid-year, we also touched the same subject in terms of retirement costs. There are fixed costs in terms of retirement from the Arizona State Retirement System and Public Safety. So that's definitely going to impact our budget. And another cost that may impact our budget as well are rising fuel costs. And on this slide, we get to see where we were at in terms of retirement. There are two forms of retirements. There's the Arizona State Retirement and the Public Safety. I've segregated each, and I've shown what the amount of what the percentage is per year. So in 10-11, excuse me, in 11-12, the amount is 10.75% versus next year it's going to be 11.15. So even though it's a increase less than 1%, there's definitely a financial impact. Projected increase in cost is approximately $64,000 for the Arizona State Retirement. In terms of the public safety, police department, we're going from 18.77% to 20.8%, an increase of 2%. And our projected cost is $76,000. And please keep in mind, that's just for the police department.
Those are set?
So those are projected.
Those are hard numbers, we know that's gonna happen?
Yes, for next fiscal year. For the fire department, public safety, we're going from 21.9 to 24.6, 2.7% increase with a cost of $61,000. Please keep a note that police and fire is part of the general fund. So those figures we will definitely see included in next year's budget. And
altogether, that adds up, sorry, Mr. Mayor, that adds up to like 200,000?
yeah, about over $200,000, correct, Mr. Hans. That includes all funds though. Includes general fund, HERF, and enterprise funds. So, do you have any questions for me? did that provide a picture of where we, in the past where we started at, or where we were at back then, where we're at and where we should be by the end of the fiscal year? Nice job.
Thank you very much, sir.
You're welcome.
Congratulations you and your staff.
Yes, this has definitely been a team project. I want to highlight Jeanette. We were here late last week. We like to do long hours sometimes when we get these projects done. Well, not that we like to, but we're kind of like, forced to. And I'd like to also thank my budget team, which we're working on the budget as well.
Great staff.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Very good. Professional presentation, very good.
Good job.
Members of the council, item number 9 will be pulled from the agenda. Item number 10, consideration and possible action of number 2012-03-023.
So move. So move, man.
Discussion. Well, this is made by Human Resources. Item number 10. We're actually going to proceed with the same evaluation form. Is that what we discussed?
Yes, we did.
Yes.
It'll be the same as last year.
And there's a timeline, I think it was presented to, it's on the, over there, same timeline.
Just looking by way of the evaluation form, ICMA still has that as their recommended format to providing helpful quantitative input to city managers based off of their performance. So it was pretty easy just to take that and slap it back in again to the process. If that's still acceptable to you as a council, we'll move in that direction. I thought it was pretty, I found a lot of benefit to it last year as I got that input from you as a council. So.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 11, consideration and possible action of order number 2012-03-024.
So moved, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Thank you very much. Discussion?
I just have, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
It's the same contract, it's no change.
No, ma'am. No change.
I want to make sure.
Any discussion?
None.
None? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Item number 12, consideration possible action of order number 2012-03-025.
I move to approve the contract.
This is item number 12.
Mm-hmm.
This is of the city of Nogales Infill Senate District.
City
Yeah.
attorney?
No, we already approved that one, Mr.
I'm sorry.
District. That's passed already.
Control.
Already passed. Do I have any a motion on this one?
Mr. Mayor, I move that
Yes.
we approve order number 2012-03-025.
Second.
Thank you very much. Discussion?
Any questions from the council?
Go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Dilly, if you could give us a little.
Could you?
I think this was discussed already at last meeting.
Yes, it was
It
discussed.
has.
But if we could,
I don't want to belabor it. Happy to answer any questions specifically, but in order to implement the direction from council based off of the last conversation, these two next items are important in order for us to be able to have in our toolbox, our economic development toolbox, the infill incentive district. And we changed it. When we first presented it to you, it was called the redevelopment district. But in order to make it more in alignment with state statute, the infill terminology has been used. And the whole idea is to bring infill to, or new development to our inside of our core business district. And that's why they call it infill.
We have a second for discussion?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. On page 3, on item number 5, okay, should it be if you're gonna, should it be the key person on any contact, and then it would be up to the city, the mayor and council to make the final decision?
On this program? Typically not. I suppose that the council, we can certainly write that in. The whole idea behind this is if a business actually meets those qualifiers that you establish in the policy itself, then it really isn't subject for a lot of discussion. They've met the qualifiers, they've brought the quality job, they beat the county standard in terms of pay, and so they've met your criteria. So it really wouldn't be something we would, at least as it's written here. If the council would like all of those types of things to come to council, you know, we can rewrite that, but that wasn't the intent behind this.
I would like to see that. Have mayor and council involved in this, making a decision, who gets it, who doesn't get it, so we can have an idea who's the people that are applying for it, qualify.
I think I would be kept in the loop there as to who's qualified, who's applying. But again, if they meet the criteria, they meet the criteria.
Well, this is the basic administrative, Mr. Machado.
Well, I was just going to suggest to Mr. Dilly, if that's what the council wants as an approval, basically, once the qualifications are established, and this is, he would be entitled to that. But under the policy in Exhibit B, it's presented to the satisfaction of the city manager. If the council wants to, we could just put in the final step to be approved, to be presented and approved finally by the council. That'd be easy to do, if that's what you want. The administrative presentation and make sure that everything is done correctly, that will be done to the satisfaction of the city manager as it is here. You know, if you want that extra step, it's easy to put in a number 11.
I prefer to have this step in.
The question,
input on it.
I think that's totally easy to do. The question, the bigger question in my mind is if they meet the qualifications, then how are you going to say no to one and yes to another? And that's kind of the problem that I see if we have an additional step in there. My purpose is just making sure that they've gone through the process and they've met your qualifications. If they've met the qualifications, I'm not even in a position to say no, at least I'm not viewing myself as that. I'm just ensuring that they've met the qualifications before they get the incentive. If they have met the qualifications, then what else are we going to weigh whether or not we say yes or no to that? And that's the holdup that I'm on.
It's basically like the qualifications when somebody goes through planning and zoning and a permit, you know. It goes to planning and zoning, they award the permit. It's not the city council that does that. It's a decision by that administratively.
I suppose that I could, we'll do whatever you guys want, obviously, but I suppose that I could make it a practice that if somebody is going through the process, that there's a return report to the council on who it is and what they're bringing to the table and how many jobs they're creating. But it wouldn't be for an approval denial type thing. It's if they meet the qualifications, they're going to get it. If they don't, then they don't get it. Kind of situation. If that's in line, if it's just a kind of a return report, we can make that.
Yeah, we can make that. But are you're not going in the direction of doing a recommendation and for us to approving the recommendation? That shouldn't be.
It's just a return report. It'll give you an update on who's trying to engage and what they're bringing to the table, what project they're doing, how many jobs they're creating, what quality of jobs it is based off of your qualifications, and let you know whether they meet the qualifications or not.
You write that in, Mr. Parra?
So I would like to have that put in, but if you guys feel okay about it, it's all right then. But I really would like to have the mayor and council have the last step of acknowledgement of what you approve. Even if they qualify, whatever, we still like to see who's doing it.
Well, I think we need direction here.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to amend Exhibit B so that it comes to it's either comes to you as a report of what's been approved by the city manager, that's option number 1, or option number 2, that it comes to you for final approval. Now, either one of those two options will have to be done by amendment so that we know what we're including here.
But the deal there is that once it's been approved, because they meet the qualifications, it's approved.
There's no reason why we
There's
should
no reason to bring it here,
recommend
because it's already been approved.
Well, it's up to you how you do it. I mean, the approval can either be by the city manager once the qualifications are met, or that the determination can be made by you. Either way, if they meet the qualifications, it will be subject to approval by you or subject to approval by the city manager. So it depends how you guys want, but we just need to know how to amend it to put it in the Exhibit B.
If the council would like to be the final approver of that, I definitely wouldn't be. It would be, you know, I would help them through the process, but then it would come to council for final approval. It doesn't make sense for me to be in that step and you to be in that step. So, again, I saw my role as shepherding people through the process, and if they meet the qualifications, I'm not going to question that. If they meet it, they meet it. If they don't, they don't. It's kind of black and white for me. But if that's the role that you want to play as a council, then we can just amend the Exhibit B.
I strongly believe it should be administrative.
I think it should be administrative. If they meet the qualifications, they meet them. There's no reason to do another step.
We'll get notified anyway, won't we? If somebody was.
Either way.
Yeah, either way.
In the loop. Yeah, we'll be notified all the steps through.
If you have me as the final approver, which is how it's written right now, based off of this dialogue, I'll just administratively implement a return and report to you guys. If there's somebody going through the process, if there's a business that's come in, they're generating new jobs, I'll make a report back to the council on who it is, where they're located, what they're doing, how many jobs they're bringing, and it'll be kind of an FYI thing for the council.
I think that would be great.
Is that fair? No, Cesar wants to have a yes or no.
I'd like to see who's applying and who's getting who qualifies and so forth. But regardless of how the council feels, it's all right with me.
Or can we not take a vote and see who agrees and who doesn't?
I believe where you're at right now is you've got a motion and a second on what's presented.
What's presented right now.
If the vote flies, then we'll go with as it's written, and my commitment is to do a return and report to the council. If you want to amend that, then you would need to have an amending motion on the table.
Well, let's vote as it is right now, and then, is there a question? Yes,
Could we just amend it, that mayor and council get a full report through the steps?
That's the way it's gonna be right now, as it is right now.
Can we do the amendment now?
Asking for that to be in there.
Oh, to be in there.
For the return report.
Return report.
You want that as a requirement in Exhibit B?
Correct. But to make the last determination by council, or just to get a report?
To be informed and, so we can have a report on what's
Oh,
going on.
yeah, well, why don't we just, let's go with a motion like that, just go ahead.
Since we have a motion and a second, if the motioner would like to adopt that modification and it's approved by the second, then you can vote on that.
Yeah.
Who made the motion?
I think I did.
Yes, you did. Go ahead, Mr. Hanisha, do the motion, Mr.
Okay, I go ahead and do the motion with the addition that the mayor and council will be kept advised throughout the process.
And report.
With the reports.
And to have me include that as a number 11 to Exhibit B.
All right, included as number 11. That should be.
And who did the second?
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the ayes have it. Item number 13, consideration possible action of ordinance number 2020-03-00-003.
Mr. Mayor,
Wait a minute, yes, okay, go ahead.
this is necessary in consideration with the order that we just passed.
Yes.
Because our ordinance doesn't have a provision to be able to rebate or to waive these fees. So we're amending the order to allow the rebates that you approved on the order.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I move to approve ordinance number 020112-03-003 and waive the second reading.
Thank you.
Remember, Mr. Gonzalez. I'm impressed.
Yes, yes, he did his homework. Discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 14, these items will be in executive session. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Thank you. Okay. Mr. Felix will be excused from executive session and the rest of the meeting. Mr. Hanesian, we're going back into session.
All right.
Thank you very much. We're going to be going to item number 15, future agenda items. And Mr. Diaz.
I've been asking about cutting the trees, the dead part of the eucalyptus trees before somebody gets hurt or something breaks or something like that. I don't know if we should put that on the agenda.
You talked to Mr. Dilly and Mr.
Yes, he has.
Yes, so maybe.
Mr. Dilly, do we need to put that on the agenda or are we looking into it?
I don't believe you need to.
Because of
You
the
can if you
cost.
want. We should have our second quote the first part of next week.
Okay.
And we do have one quote, but it's hard to move on the one quote because that's all there is locally. And so we've had to rely on outside to get that second quote. I had an email today come across my desk that said that we'll have that quote first part of next week. And based off of that, I think we can move forward.
Mr. Diaz, is that okay with you? Give it 2 more weeks and now we'll put it in the agenda?
Okay, that's fine. One other thing, how about the ponds, the fountain?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're coming into summer, spring, summer, and a lot of people come here and enjoy the water and everything.
Let's put that one on the next agenda.
Okay, we'll put that one in the agenda. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? No? Okay, item number 16, Mayor and Council's report. We're kind of pushing on the time here. Do any of you have anything to say?
I have a lot I wanted to.
I doubt it very much, Mr. Hanesian.
No comment.
Do anybody?
Just a small report.
Yes.
From Rocky Point, okay?
Okay.
Okay, now talk about the port of entry, they said, you know, the same deal that we get every quarterly of the year, the same report about the cross and so forth. And we stood up and told them that we having this new port of entry, we don't have the blues to work, to manage it. And why not use some of the border patrol people to be as guards at the port of entry on the pedestrian gates? And then open all the pedestrian gates to get people across. Also on a vehicle crossing. And we also told them why we have a southbound to Mexico, 2 lanes, only 2 lanes, and it's always blocked by that bus, deportation bus. He takes over one of the lanes, and we bottleneck all the way back to the church at times, further back than that. And I asked him, how come they don't use Terrace Street? It's a deportation center, and then walk them across.
That's good. That's great.
To release it 2 lanes. And then he said that they were going to get about. I asked him the last time there was about 120 new booths. We're going to get agents will be coming. We're going to be assigned to the Port Authority. But I told them there's a bunch of port of entries, but we have them all over the world, around the United States on boats, you know. And I said, you know, if you're talking about 119, 150 agents, you're only talking about maybe 1 or 2 in Nogales. We had other ports, seaports that we have around the United States that they're going to get their ports. You know, it's not coming directly to Nogales.
Well, we're hoping that we do get a sufficient amount of personnel there to staff that port. Because, you know, I would hate to see the federal government having a, you know, state-of-the-art port and that's that. But I'm sure they will do that. I don't think they're not going to do that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to have to move on.
They're going to have to.
And next quick item, because I attended most of the conferences you had to attend. It was, they're attracting, Mexico's only interested right now, in attracting the tourists. So what they're doing, they're upgrading every little town, the main point of interest of every little town, they're upgrading it. And they furnish paint to paint the houses, to paint the alleys, so forth. There's their target. Hunting's going to be one of the main targets too. They're offering hunters to go out and hunt the blacktail, the whitetail, whatever game they have possible for them. They're opening the doors for that because they want to attract all the tourism. And we talked about Nogales, about the problems we have with crossing the gate, the people, the complaints that we have. So we threw as much as we could at them. But I think it's a rehearsal because I've been getting all this before ahead of time from other people, not only us. But the main thing is a highway. It's going to cut 31 miles, a little bit shorter to go to Texas. They come into Nogales. But I tell them that the truck drivers don't care the mileage. If they know that this port of entry in Nogales goes faster, then the ones in Texas, they can go 50 miles and they'll go to the port of entry. It gives them better access to go across. So I know we laying back. I mean, we try to upgrade our system and we laying back on it.
What I mentioned about that highway from Mazatlan to Tamaulipas is it's an effort mixed from Mexico. It's not Homeland Security doing it or the produce industry. They're doing it because they want to make sure that they have two options of transporting their produce and their trade. And there's more than enough for everybody. So, but like you say, if we have a state-of-the-art port and facilitate the crossing, we should be on top of it right now.
That's right.
Just one comment on that. Everybody keeps talking about, that the produce distributors from Nogales are going to go to McAllen. Well, why don't we go hustle the distributors in McAllen? The produce people here don't want that one. No. They don't want that one. They're just worried about going over there. But the comment was made, well, let's go hustle the ones in McAllen. And all the produce people said, no, don't go bring them here, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's a two-way street. There's going to be a lot of them wanting to come down here. Once this port opens up, there's going to be a lot of them that we've got to hustle. That we've got to let them know this thing is open, right?
Anybody else?
Well, I just want to take the opportunity to invite you all to the Mariachi Festival. It's going to be March 29th at the Nogales High School Auditorium, free of charge, and it's through the Hermanamiento Ambos Nogales. And the other one, we are almost through with the Plaza Comunitaria. Mr. Machado, I'll appreciate what you're working with so that we can finish that as soon as possible. That's through the Consulado and with the help of Hector through the housing. That's all.
Anybody else? No? You guys done? Now this is what I've got.
No.
No. Keep it low. Continue with it. Ben, come over here, Mijo.
Keep it low on this because
No, I know. We're here. Take this to your dad.
Okay.
This is my writing list, and so you can see what I did. That's only a part of the work I did this past month. That's only about a quarter of it, but I know you guys, and we need to move on. Mr. Julie, do you have anything?
I do have a couple of items.
Okay.
Please.
This is item number 17, by the way.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just wanted to quickly report that we have been very, very, very actively engaged in opposition to House Bill 2586. There was a kind of an emergency type meeting called by the mayor this morning where he met with the business community that represented Fresh Produce Association, the Port Authority, downtown merchants, the Koreans were there, NCDC was represented. The purpose of that meeting was to fulfill our end of a strategy that was put together in concert with Maricopa Association of Governments, with intergov personnel up in the Phoenix area to try to stop House Bill 2586. That strategy was to basically get everybody on board, not only the government sector, but the business sector, in a unified voice that flooded the House, the Speaker of the House, his office, the Senate President's office, the Majority Leader's office, the Governor's office, in an attempt to stop this bill from moving past the House into Senate. Now this bill this is that border safety zone type alert thing with Homeland Security. The bill's passed all the committees that it would need to pass at the House level. It's had its first reading and the second reading. The third reading is basically just ceremonial, and from that it gets pushed into the Senate. However, we've been told that the Speaker of the House is sympathetic to the tourism industry and is not really personally inclined in moving this bill forward, and has, in a non-public way, indicated an interest to get as much information in opposition as possible to help him kill the bill and not move it into the Senate. So that's what the meeting was about this morning. There's a lot of hands on deck on this one. A lot of cities in the border region all coming together to voice opposition, and we'll see what plays out in the future. But we've got kind of a plan 1, plan 2, and plan 3 approach to this. Hopefully plan 1 is successful and we kill it before it even moves into the Senate. Plan 2 deals with dealing with it at the Senate level, and we've got that kind of working already in terms of garnering enough votes to oppose it. And then plan 3 is to solicit the governor's office to just veto this thing and not let it move through. So happy to answer any questions you have afterwards on that, but that's kind of an update on that House bill. Just wanted to let you know, if you haven't been on our website lately, there's been some new development. We've introduced a new page, the economic development page. There's a lot of good information on there. There's some information about quarterly reports, industry trends. I think the paper has looked at that already and has had good comments about it. We've passed that on to the Chamber of Commerce so that they're aware, and have given them some reports they've asked for. So get on it. There's a lot of resources on there, and I think it'll be a good reference point for a lot of people in the community, a lot of businesses, and so on and so forth. Wanted to just give you a heads up. There was a 3-year contract that will be expiring this June. It's the risk liability insurance program. That is a multi-year contract. It's a 3-year contract, and it expires again June 30th of this year. The value of that contract is almost $600,000 a year. So obviously it requires us to go out for bid, make sure that we're beating the bushes, and we bring back the bid results to you. It's going to be a competitive bid. We've been working on the RFP. It's out. The RFP deadline is April 11th. I think that's the deadline. And having said that, we hope to solicit anybody who's interested and qualified, obviously, to come to the table and put their bid in. But we'll be bringing those results back to you as a council. It's a pretty big contract for the city. And finally, I just wanted to plant a seed in your minds, kind of along the lines of what the council member Parada was bringing to the table by way of a report. The seed that I'd like to plant and maybe discuss with you at a future venue is whether or not the council would be interested in entertaining a kind of a revolving loan program. We talked about it at a budget level maybe the first year that I was here, but the revolving loan program, obviously we'd have to put the policy in place, but it would be a program that local businesses could apply for and take advantage of. Maybe a low subsidized loan that we provide a business that might not have an avenue otherwise, and the whole emphasis behind that, kind of like what Mexico is doing in Sonora, is to beautify and enhance and bring up to date buildings and facades and things like that. Just planting a seed. I haven't really developed it. But if there's an interest of the council to consider something like that, the revolving loan program, obviously the people that participate would have to pay the loan back, but it might be at a more favorable rate than what they could get themselves at a bank. And it might be more favorable than what we're getting our money in a bank. So you think about that, and it's kind of a win-win situation. We look at the interest we're garnering, in the bank, And if we can get a little more than that, but it's still cheaper for the business to loan from us, then it's kind of a win-win. And it's not meant to be a lot of money, it's just meant to be something to help them out. Just keep that in mind, and maybe as we get into the budget season, budget session, we can talk about that and whether or not it's going to work for you.
Okay.
Just a thought. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. This means